We are in the conference room of Central United Methodist Church, and today is January the 31st, 2006. And we thought, thank you, Dr. Fields, for allowing us to interview you. And we would love to hear your story about your life here in Mooresville.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you here today. Let me first of all say that I love Mooresville. It's just part of my life. And I've been around the world several times, but still Mooresville is my first love. I was born on West McNeely Avenue, 108. And I was born, I hate to tell you, in the year 1926. And we lived on McNeely Avenue until I went into the military service in World War II. I'll always remember the street was not paved, it was just a muddy street. And behind our house was a cotton field and a cow barn. I always remember the cow. Her name was Nancy. And we all had a real good, honest neighborhood. I can also remember at one time the sheriff, or the chief of police, chased a bootlegger down our street. And as I was going to school, in the mud, I saw a pistol. And I called my dad and told him, and it seemed like the bootlegger had thrown his pistol out as he went down the street. He was being chased. Also, when I was a boy, on the corner on McNeely Avenue was the Old North School, and then across the road was the new Park View. And the Old North School stood there for a number of years, and they later tore it down. That really and truly was another world. It was kind of like living in Mayberry, if you're familiar with Andy Griffin's life.
Frank, did you go to the Old North School or did you go to Park View?
No, I went to Park View. Mm-hmm. The Old North School was not being utilized when I was coming along. They'd already stopped using it. And its later years, it was a high school. And but no, I went to Park View. And I went to the Park View and then over to the high school until I left Mooresville. And on my 17th birthday, I got permission to join the military in World War II. Mooresville was a very, very patriotic town. And we all had our hearts in this great war. And people don't realize what it was like. But you could, and I remember these cases where the train would come to Mooresville and stop at the depot downtown. And they'd pull open the boxcar door, and there would be a coffin with the American flag of some local boy who had been killed during the war. We were a very patriotic community at that time, and I volunteered in my 17th birthday. I went off to basic training, and believe it or not, I was trained as a medic. And when I got through medic training, they called them hospital corpsmen then. But anyway, as I got through, they came up to me and says, "Fields, how'd you like to go to North Carolina?" I said, "I'll be the best Navy recruiter you ever had. I'll get people to volunteer. I'm telling you, I'm your man." They said, "Okay, good. We'll pack you up and put you on a train." And they shipped me to a place called Camp Lejeune with all the Marines. You must remember that the Marines are part of the Navy. But anyway, I went there, and with the Marine Corps as a medic, the medics, Navy medics look after the Marines. But anyway, then I got so good, they came up to me and says, you know, we're going to do something else for you. Pack your gear. I packed my gear. They shipped me to a place called Bayonne, New Jersey. And there they put me on a ship with the Army, 4,000 soldiers going to North Africa. Away I went. And over in Africa, North Africa, here again I was a medic, and I got trained in what they call beach parties. And they shipped me over to Italy, and I was over in Italy, and then from Italy we went and participated in the invasion of France, which you are all familiar with, I know. Everything was fine. They later shipped me back to the United States, shipped me to the South Pacific, and I did the same thing there that I'd done in Europe. But one of the things that I'm bringing all this up that touched me very much, in 1979, my wife and myself had returned from Little's Kitchen, and I was sitting in the living room, and my wife was back in the kitchen. And there was a program that had come on called The World at War. Sir Laurence Olivier was the English gentleman who was running the footage. And I was sitting there watching that, and lo and behold, who flashes up in the TV but me? Well, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I called my wife in, and she said, you know, I don't know about you. But anyway, there I was. So I learned a lot. I picked up the telephone, and I called NBC New York. And they answered the phone, and they says, don't you know nobody works in these stations on weekends but the news people? But give us your name and your address, and we'll see what we can do. Well, I thought that was the end of that. The next morning, I get a call from NBC New York telling me that they would like proof of this, and what they were going to do is to send that film to Charlotte, NBC's subsidy, and wanted me to go down there, and they were going to see. So I agreed, and I went down to Charlotte to the station. I went in, and they sat me down, and they played the film, and they looked, and they said, okay, that is you. So they agreed that they gave me a copy of the original film and everything. And it was very, touching to get all of this. And the next thing I know, the Charlotte Observer got it, and they wrote an article on it and printed it. But anyway, that's one of the things that in my life that really helped me find out the facts of life. But Mooresville has always been the heart of everything that I have ever done. And I want you to know that I'll do anything I can for Mooresville, because as I see this growth that's taking place, I want to sit down and cry. And also, my years of service on the school board have really been touching. When I left the school board after 32 years, it seemed to have been the loss of a loved one. but there are certain things that I see that we did as a member of the Board of Education that I think really makes Mooresville Schools an honored institution of higher learning. I feel like that the projects that we accomplished, for instance, you may not know, we didn't have a football field. Every school in Iredell County had a football stadium, but Mooresville, and we were playing in a baseball field over here, so that you folks might remember. And I went before the county commission, and I begged and cried and cried and begged, and they never would do anything. And finally, I went up there one night, and I'll always remember they had moved from Statesville to have a meeting in Union Grove, and I went up there. And of course, everybody on the board was a Democrat, and I was the only Republican. And I begged and asked them for some money, and they just grunted. And after my presentation, I got up and was walking out the door, and one of them said, "Wait a minute, Frank." And the old boy was a mean Democrat, Bill Mills. I had met him in his industry. And he said, "I'll make a motion that we give you enough money to build a stadium." And he did, and so help me, they passed. And would you believe that I got that night $300,000 from the Iredell County Commissioners? And that is only, though, half of the cost of the stadium. The total cost of the stadium at that time was $600,000. But you have to understand that where the stadium was being built was a gully, and the National Guard in Mooresville went over and filled in that gully for us, and it was an old lumber yard over there, and the Wilsons were the only house over there, and they leveled that off, and we built that stadium. And today it is approved that you can have state athletic events there. It will hold 3,000 people. There's 2,000 seats on the home side and 1,000 on the visitor side. And it is really a credit to Mooresville because it is used constantly.
About what year was that, Frank?
It was 1968, and that's when it was christened and finished off, but it was in the 60s. And also another thing that I'm real proud of that we accomplished was, I must say this, Mitchell College at that time was meeting in one room at Wood School, and they had a few students in there. Well, at that time, the gymnasium across the street from Central Methodist Church was a junk pile. They had put all of this and that and other in it, and it was sitting there, and the labor and crew did use it occasionally. So I came up with the brilliant idea, and I say brilliant, that the college should take that over. Well, people in this community, believe it or not, didn't agree with that. So we had one of those in-house political battles. And what happened, finally, after so long a time, we got the approval to school would sell the gym to Mitchell, and the county commissioners would give us funds to put that together and start it as a school. And to let me say this, today, that there are, and this is hard for me to believe, they moved from a one room at Woods. Today there are over 1,000 students attending Mitchell Community College in the Mooresville area, which is fantastic.
Again, about what year are we talking about when they were in one room at Woods?
Here again, I guess I must go back into the 60s, see.
So at that time, the old
Central High School had been torn down, and the only part that was remaining was the gymnasium. Is that right?
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
That's correct. And well, it was just
A vacant field.
all out here was, yeah. And of course, we got the cooperation from Central Methodist Church, and then everybody cooperated. I must truthfully say, I was chairman of the Methodist Board of Stewards at that time, so I could get them to say amen. But another thing that happened about that time was getting the money for the field house, which we have. And I helped get money for that, and people in the community contributed very, very much. Let's get off of things that I've done, and let me tell you a few things about the history of Mooresville that you may or may not want to know.
We definitely want to know.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Glenwood Memorial Cemetery. My dad started that thing, and I'll always remember, he got two guys to help him out, and you may or may not remember these people, John D. Beam and Joel V. Brawley. Got them to help. And the name Glenwood, Pappy used that because when he was a young fella up in New York State, he worked for a piece of land, and it was called Glenwood, so he felt like that would be a great name for this, and that's how I named it. But one thing I'll always remember about Glenwood Memorial Cemetery, the first person was buried there. I helped put him in the ground. And let me tell you why and how. World War II was just over. And I came home, it was in December, right at Christmas, and I came home, and they had the first person to bury over there, and I've got his name. The first person that was buried over there was J. Harrison Crisco. He was born in September the 13th, 1888, and he died December the 28th, 1945, right after Christmas. I got discharged from the service on Christmas. I came home, and the first thing my daddy wanted me to do was go over there and help them bury that man. And I went over there, and it was snowing. Smokey Cabin had his hearse over there, and there was nothing but mud. They buried Mr. Crisco, and I had to get out there in my uniform in the mud and push that hearse out of the mud to get it out of Glenwood Memorial out of there, with Smokey driving it. So that's where the first person was buried there, and the conditions there. Pappy, my dad did a lot of things around about, and I found something here that you folks may or may not appreciate, but here's a copy made from the Mooresville News Leader. Mooresville News Leader, and headlines: Mooresville will have Junior Legion baseball team. This is dated March the 2nd, 1939. And it goes on to tell in the article here that Frank V. Fields, my dad, put together the first American Legion baseball team and got American Legion baseball started here in Mooresville. I'm doing all the talking. Y'all got anything you want me to answer?
Well, wasn't your father involved in building the Panama Canal?
Yes. Yeah, I should have started out with that. He certainly was. And it's amazing some of the things that he did. And he has, and I have in my possession, which I should have brought, a medal given to him by Teddy Roosevelt, gave the people who worked on the canal a medal. And he has that medal. He could tell some wild stories about what was going on down there all through the years. He worked there, and one thing I have in my possession, which I should have brought and shown you, but a beautiful walking cane. And what he did while he was there, to keep from going nuts, I guess, he took a piece of lumber and began to whittle out a walking cane. And he made one of these walking canes that the tap dancer uses, and it's the most beautiful walking cane you've ever seen. And he made that thing, and you tell somebody that was made in the Panama Canal, they think you're crazy. But he made this walking cane.
I'm curious, excuse me,
Yeah,
I'm curious, now your father was born in Pennsylvania. How did he end up in Mooresville?
okay. What happened was, after he graduated from college, the first job he had was working, he graduated as an engineer, was in New York City helping build the subways. And he worked there. Then they wanted people that would go to work on the Panama Canal. He volunteered to go, and he went and worked there. Frankly, he needed the money. And I have a letter written to him by his daddy, who was a New York farmer. And as a farmer, he did three things. He was a cabinet maker, a farmer, and a Methodist preacher. And he wrote his son a letter, which I have. And he was telling your mama's this and your mama's that, and so on and so on and so on. Son, is there any way that you could let us have $100 because we are in such financial straits? And I think Pepe was getting about $90 a month back then. That was big money, working on the Panama Canal. After the Panama Canal began to taper down and so on, he then went to the island of Haiti and built roads, and he went to several of the islands and worked and built these things. Then what he did, he came back to the United States, to Florida, because he was going where the work was. And he built roads and different things in Florida. And one of the things he did was build sewage systems, in towns. And he started doing that, and he came up the map and came to Mooresville. And he put in the sewage and built the filter plant down here, the old filter plant. He built all of that. And while he was here, he courted. My mother had some kin people who lived over here in Sherrills Ford. She and her girlfriend came from Burgaw, North Carolina, which is right outside of Wilmington, actually. They rode the train to Mooresville, North Carolina, and was met at the train station here by the superintendent of schools of Catawba over there. And he came to Mooresville to pick them up, these two girls, in a buggy. And they rode the buggy from Mooresville over to Sherrills Ford. At Sherrills Ford, and it's still over there, part of it, the school, and there was what they call a teacherage. And all of the women, all lived in that one particular house, and that's where they had to stay. And what happened back in those days, the guys in Mooresville would go to the teachers to court. And that was where the girls were and so on. And that's how they met. And it's a funny story they used to tell the men, and they laughed so they cried. They said that High Price, do y'all remember Mr. High Price, the pharmacist?
Mm-hmm.
Said he went with them one night over there to court, and said the guys got over there and they said, now, High Price, you get out and find us a place where we can take these girls to court. When we get out of that teachers, we can get out of that teachers. And find us a place that we can go. And High Price said, you ain't got nothing to worry about. And he gets out and goes, and then the next thing they know, they hear him hollering, help, help, help. And they went down there, and High Price fell in a pig pen. And they had to put him in, and all of them take him home because he was stinking. So that was the society back in those days. But anyway, Pappy came to Mooresville, and he built all of this stuff in the waterworks and everything, and the roads. And believe it or not, the curb, and you being on the city council, the curb has got granite. And I always remember him talking about, he got that out of the granite out here at Kerrigan's farm, that place. He got all that and brought it in and narrowed it down and put that on those curves, you know.
And they're putting it back when they redo the streets.
Are they?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, that stuff is pushing 100, I guess. But anyway, that's where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And but he did all of that type work, and he was going to go over. He did Lexington's waterworks and road, and he would have left here, but he got married, and so that is pretty much a.
Well, wasn't he also involved in starting a savings and loan association here also?
Yeah, the Citizens Savings and Loan, and he was in 1942 the second president of the Citizens Savings Loan, but they started here.
Mr. Colson was the first, wasn't he?
Probably. Now, what that did, it grew into it's BB&T now. You know, everybody bought it and all that stuff like that. But
Okay, now I want to talk a little bit more about you.
yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know that you work for a chemical company and,
Yes.
and you traveled around, but you've also been also involved in a lot of civic organizations. I know you've served with Mitchell Board, and what are some other things that you have done? You've been on the Board of Trustees of Mitchell College, and what are some other civic organizations that you've been involved in?
Well, I've pretty much, been a member of all of them, I guess you might say.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been a member of the Kiwanis and been president of the Kiwanis Club, and tried to support all of these different things. I have been active in Catawba College. I have established a scholarship for students in Mooresville that want to go to Mitchell and study nursing. Believe it or not, Mitchell has a very outstanding school of nursing. I try to participate in everything. And
Anybody else have any questions?
Frank, let me ask you another question about the cemetery. Glenwood, you mentioned your father and two other gentlemen were instrumental in forming that. What did they actually do? They went out and bought the land and sold it to individuals, or how did the town of Mooresville get involved in it?
What they did, Pappy bought the cemetery. He bought the land. Well, it wasn't a cemetery. He bought the land, and then he designed his architectural talent for the cemetery, and then once he had it designed and all, and got it approved legally, they began to sell lots. You can buy a lot where you can be buried. And Cora Freeze sold the cemetery lots in the summer. The school teacher, she would sell cemetery lots. And there is a fund established that perpetuates anything, to make sure it keeps going. And it was a private industry up for a number of years, and then the city purchased the cemetery. And it is really and truly, that's a good cemetery. And I remember going with him several places. He would go around to other towns and other cemeteries and look at them and compare notes and see what's what and so on.
I have a question about the cemetery also. I know that when it was first built, there was a fountain there in the center, but now that is a Veterans Memorial. How did that come about?
I did that. What happened, he built a fountain there and put goldfish in it and these flowers that grow in that thing, and believe it or not, the goldfish turned into big fish, but you couldn't keep it clean. In other words, even with the fountain in it, you just couldn't keep it clean. People would throw stuff in it and this, that, and the other, and so on and so on. So finally the decision was made, we need something permanently here. And we took the fish and we gave them to some other pond, he did, and filled that in and planted grass and everything in it. And the city, of course, later years bought the cemetery and they helped maintain it. And then I went out and got the approval to put a war memorial there to all the people who had served in all wars, and we got that. And the only way we could get the thing made was down in Georgia. That's granite country down there, and the town was cooperating with me, and I got the thing up here and got it erected and so on. And the writing on it, I wrote that, but I had Miss Smith to help me.
Miss Smith was the English teacher at the high school.
That's right.
Martha.
And Martha, and she'd tell me, no, that ain't the way you do it this way, yeah, and so on. But anyway, we put that thing together and got it on there, and I'll always remember that point weighs 2,000 pounds. And that is real nice. That's a credit. But that's the reason we were forced out of the pond up there. But it's a nice cemetery, and but I must truthfully say it is growing. It is growing. What other questions? Surely y'all got
Frank,
something.
this goes way back. You said you went to Parkview.
Yeah.
Were you there when the school burned?
Yeah.
And what took
Okay,
place then?
let me explain that now, what we did. The school burned. So what they did is they took the students, I think, first grade, and we went, let me make sure I'm getting it squared away now, because they split us up. We went to South School, a half a day. And the high school, they put in Parkview. And we went, that's the way it worked. Half a day and then the high school. And believe it or not, I have been told that they did not lose a day. And it was really a stroke of genius of the way the thing was handled.
What year was that? You remember?
No, in the 30s.
It's in the 30s. Was Stewart Park there when you were a
Yeah.
child?
Stewart Park was really a credit to Mooresville. They had the swimming pool down there, they built that. And then down below, going down the creek, they developed it up, and they had a real nice spring down there. And it was really a beautiful piece of land that people would go to. And that swimming pool and all was really a credit to Mooresville. And they even up the ball field behind Park View. They even played baseball there. And it was real nice. It was a credit to Mooresville. I even remember an old gentleman living on McNeely Avenue. His name was Rainey. Civil War veteran, they said. He walked down to that spring and got a bucket full of spring water every day and took it home and drank it. He didn't want none of that contaminated city water. But
Frank, can you tell us a little bit about the War Memorial? Weren't you instrumental in that also?
well, yeah, that was a credit to Mooresville, and all the people participated in that. And if I'm not mistaken now, don't hold me to, I think Mooresville Mills pitched in a lot on the War Memorial.
And then you were instrumental in getting the sign up over there, though, weren't you?
Yeah. On the War Memorial over there, believe it or not, what they did is they took the plaque from the city and all, and one from down to Mill and all, and put them over there. And what they were, they listed World War I and everything that happened in World War I. So I went over there, and nowhere had they listed the names of the World War II boys from Mooresville and the Mooresville community that were killed. And so we researched that, and we got the plaque up with their names there on the wall. And it looks real good, and we're proud of that. And now let me tell you, that War Memorial is a credit to Mooresville. And I hope the people keep it up and the city keeps it up, because that's a credit.
We're getting ready to do something about that park now.
Are they? But let me tell you, that is a historical area right in there. And believe it or not, that creek spring is a mother of Rocky River.
Isn't it called Dye Creek?
Dye Creek's on down.
No.
That's the mother. It comes out down there, and other creeks join it and going down, and it runs down to eastern North Carolina, and it gets to be a river. And they later run into the ocean down there. But that's it. Those stones.
What we call Slicky Rock.
Yeah, Slicky Rock and all. That's very
And of
historical.
course, Hood Field is a very historical field too, right there.
Okay, now let me go back to my daddy in Hood Field. Hood Field is 10 yards short. And the reason it's 10 yards short is, and I remember this as a boy, the CCC during the Depression was down there, and they were digging, believe it or not, to build that road across that down gully. It used to be an old bridge across it, and they were there working. So they wanted a football field, so Pappy designed a football field, but he couldn't get to 100 yards because the road on this side and the cemetery on that side. So what he did, he built the field and everything, and it's 10 yards short. So what you do is when you get up ready to score a touchdown, then they move you back 10 yards, and then you go on. So that's the way it works. And nobody say nothing, I mean, you know. And those old cement stands, they're still there. I hope the Baptists don't let it go astray, but I maintain that. Bill Hood Field is, and it was named for the coach, Hood, Coach Hood. And, yeah, there's a lot of beautiful history here. We just need to preserve it and keep it going. And but what scares me, and I'm being honest again, is this growth is just unreal. And I tell everybody in meetings, and they think I'm a nut, is that this growth's like kudzu. There ain't nothing you can do about it. But I always heard billy goats that eat kudzu. Maybe we get some billy goats.
Well, it's a problem we all have, that has to be dealt with.
I know, but it's real sad.
Well, is there anything else you want to share with
Well, I
us?
got some pictures here, but you can't see that.
Tell us about them.
Tell us about them.
Well, this is just a picture taken, I was telling you about, that came from national TV.
Oh, this is the picture of you that
Yeah,
was on
yeah.
the film?
Yeah. And something else I received, I don't want to brag all the time.
This is your story.
Yeah.
Remember, history is his story.
Oh, is that right?
His story. His story.
I received out of just a clear blue sky this envelope, and it came from the Consultant General of La France. And this came here. It just came in the mail, and I've got the date here. Well, I can't read French, but anyway, here's a letter that I received from the Consultant General de France. And this letter writes a letter and tells me this and that and other, that they had a meeting and so on and so on. Ma'am?
Read the letter.
Dear Mr. Fields, on November the 16th, 2005, the French consultant organized a commemorative ceremony for American veterans who participated in World War II. Since you were not able to attend, I am honored to bestow upon you the endorsed certificate in recognition of your courageous participation in the liberation of France. May it serve as a remembrance of your great effort and our sincere gratitude. D-Day was the signal so long awaited by the oppressed people of Europe to raise with the strength of despair to join their liberties. May we all remember the lesson history teaches us time and time again, that life, liberty, and peace are based on the mutual respect of all human beings for one another, regardless of religion or race, and that we must wage a never-ending battle so that these fundamental rights may exist. Thank you for the service you rendered to my country. With my best respects, Philip Ambert, Consultant General. And then with this letter was this diploma.
Oh, that's nice.
That is something.
That's nice.
So I just out of the clear blue sky got that. And
That was because you participated in the invasion in Normandy.
yeah. They sent it to me, and so and I'll be glad for y'all to look at it anytime. See if there's anything else.
Were there any other of your buddies from Mooresville that participated in the invasion, or do you know?
I don't know of any. I got a picture here. It's a funny thing. Well, I got a picture here of a German officer we captured. But I got a picture here over there during that time of me dressed in one of the German uniforms. And I brought that back to Mooresville, the uniform, and I showed it to them. And the first thing they did, the mill down here, said, we want that. We want to see what that material's like, see if we can duplicate it. So they took the material and uniform and Mooresville Mills at that time. But Is there anything that I can discuss with you, or I'll be glad
Is there
to.
anything else you want to tell us about?
Well, there's one thing that I'm real proud of that happened, and was on the public schools. Again, a number of years ago, since I was on the Board of Education, the politicians began to talk about consolidation and all like that. And so what I did is I went to Raleigh. Well, first I went before the Ireland County Board of Commissioners. I went before the State Board of Education. I went to see the powers to be in the House of Representatives and the powers to be in the State Senate, and told them our situation here and how our forefathers had established the graded school district, and that we wanted to pertain and maintain this. And so they hemmed and hawed and grunted and snorted, and they indeed put together another bill. And that bill was presented and was passed, and it became a law. It is the law. And I'll always remember when this happened, I went before the State Board of Education, and that's all the wheelers and dealers. And I made the presentation and so on and so on. And the chairman of the State Board of Education got up and says, "Fields, if you've settled all of this and got it through the House and the Senate, and you've got it through the Ireland County Board of Commissioners, I'd like to do one thing. I'd like to send you to Israel and see if you can't straighten them Jews out." So I
Appreciate that.
Yes.
I thought, well, boy, amen.
Well, now, there are only a few school systems in the entire state that are like Mooresville, that are their own entity. Is that correct?
Yeah, there were about 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That have their own taxing power.
yeah. One of them is Chapel Hill. Of course, you can figure if it's in Carolina, there ain't nobody gonna rock that boat. And but I hope that we can maintain our heritage and independence and so on. But as things change, there's no telling. Is there anything else that I can?
If you don't have anything else you want to tell us about, I think we've asked
Good
you.
interview.
We got some wonderful interview, and we thank you. And I will say this in closing, that you have contributed tremendously to the life of Mooresville. Your contributions are numerous, and the people of Mooresville appreciate you. And thank you for your interview.
Well, I want you to know I love Mooresville.
Thank you, Frank.